Express.co.uk will have the very latest Hurricane Nate path updates, storm track, weather models, the latest forecasts, tracking maps and videos in one place, updated throughout the day and night until the storm has passed. Tropical Storm Nate is on track to strengthen into a hurricane before making landfall on the U.S. Gulf Coast. At the weekend, at least 22 people have died after the storm hit Nicaragua, Honduras and Costa Rica, with many more missing and thousands forced to evacuate. Warnings are in place for parts of Nicaragua, Honduras, Mexico and parts of the U.S. Gulf Coast, where Nate is forecast to make landfall as a hurricane this weekend. Hurricane Nate strengthened slightly on Saturday as it churned through the Gulf of Mexico, threatening to hit the U.S. Central Gulf Coast as a Category 2 storm. The outer bands of the hurricane are expected to batter parts of the U.S. Gulf Coast on Saturday evening, with the center of the storm forecast to make landfall overnight, said U.S. National Hurricane Center NHC spokesman Dennis Feltgen. Hurricane Nate's path is expected to strike between Slidell, Louisiana, and Alabama's Mobile Bay, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey said in a message on Twitter. Here are live updates from the NOAA, NHC and the National Weather Service NWS, as well as the most advanced weather models from around the world. NHC Hurricane Nate path tropical storm to hit U.S. Gulf Coast, says NHC and NOAA. Hurricane Nate path NOAA latest map update 5:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Hurricane Nate could cause deadly tornadoes and storm surges with dangerous rip currents and tides. According to the National Hurricane Center, Hurricane Nate could cause a couple of tornadoes beginning late this afternoon over parts of the central Gulf Coast region. Surf swells could also be generated by Tropical Storm Nate as it makes its way towards landfall this evening, and will affect land areas around the Gulf of Mexico during the next day or so. The NHC said these swells are likely to cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. Please consult products from your local weather office. Nate will mark the fourth major storm to slam the United States in the current hurricane season, following Harvey, Irma and Maria, which devastated Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico, respectively. But as a Category 1 or 2, the weakest in the 5-category ranking used by meteorologists, Nate may not pack the same punch as its predecessors. However, images taken in Alabama show fierce rains, heavy winds and choppy seas at Orange Beach, as Hurricane Nate approaches the southern coastline. 4:59 p.m. Hurricane Nate just 50 miles from mouth of the Mississippi River. The tropical storm is quickly approaching landfall tonight, with the NCH currently reporting the center of Nate to be 80 kilometers from the Mississippi River. In its latest advisory, the NCH says Hurricane Nate conditions are now spreading onshore in southeastern Louisiana as it moves toward the north-northwest at around 23 miles per hour. The advisory read it turn toward the north and a slight decrease in forward speed are expected during the next several hours, followed by a turn toward the north-northeast later tonight. A motion toward the northeast is expected on Sunday. After landfall, the center of Hurricane Nate is expected to pass over portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee late tonight through Sunday night. Maximum sustained winds are near 90 miles per hour, 150 kilometers per hour, and some further strengthening is possible before it makes landfall tonight as a Category 2 hurricane. 4:37 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Hurricane Nate has curtailed 92% of U.S. Gulf of Mexico oil output and up to 3% of refining capacity. The tropical storm continues to head to the U.S. Gulf Coast, and is expected to hit areas that largely were spared by Hurricane Harvey's wrath nearly 6 weeks ago. Hurricane Nate has already forced evacuations at more than 300 U.S. Gulf of Mexico offshore platforms. Colby Goatley, a meteorologist at Weather Decision Technologies Inc., said his firm is helping about 10 drilling rig operators chart a course away from Nate, which is producing waves of up to 30 feet (9.1 meters) near its center. He said rigs on the eastern side of Nate are racing westward to get on that more favorable side. Reuters. Hurricane Nate rain and winds at Orange Beach in Alabama. Reuters. Hurricane Nate gains strength as it moves toward the Gulf Coast. 3:47 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Hurricane Nate path speed increasing as Tropical Storm Nate heads to Gulf Coast. Chief meteorologist from CBS Eric Fisher warned the rapid speed of Hurricane Nate was remarkable and would bring fierce winds inland when it makes landfall later tonight. He tweeted, "The forward speed of Nate is really remarkable for the Gulf. This is going to come in like a wall, bring destructive winds well inland, might be some minor intensity fluctuations before landfall, but at this point we are pretty locked in with what we've got. Nate, the storm surge will move in very quickly with this storm. Extremely dangerous. Say Louisiana to the Panhandle. Look at Nate's wind field as it approaches the coast. core of strongest wind surge easily seen on the east side. 3:24 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time as Hurricane Nate approaches. New Orleans mayor tells residents there is no need to panic. New Orleans evacuated some residents as the storm approached, amid warnings the winds could cause significant power outages in the city and bring storm surges of 6 to 9 feet, 1.8 to 2.7 meters high. Mayor Mitch Landrieu said, "We have been through this many times. There is no need to panic." His comments were alluding in part to Hurricane Katrina, which triggered severe flooding in New Orleans and killed hundreds of people in August 2005, but residents of the city known as the Big Easy seem to be taking Hurricane Nate in stride. Plentiful supplies of propane, generators and plywood remaining. Paula Clemens, an employee at Lowe's hardware store in the St. Roch area, said they don't start boarding up until it's a Category 3. We're used to floods. Comes with the territory. 3:01 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Next storm to be called Ophelia. Meteorologist Ryan Maui revealed the next name on the storm list is Ophelia. Currently a subtropical storm, Ophelia's transition to become fully tropical is already underway as Hurricane Nate edges closer to the Gulf of Mexico and the U.S. The name was last used in 2011, when Hurricane Ophelia was the most intense hurricane of that year's Atlantic hurricane season. Highest winds of 140 miles per hour were recorded, and the storm affected the Leeward Islands, Bermuda and Newfoundland. No fatalities were recorded and damage was minimal. Friday, October 6, 2017. This NOAA NASA goes east satellite image taken on October 6, 2017 at 11:30 UTC shows tropical storm activity along the coast of Central America. 2:47 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Heavy rains to hit the U.S. as Hurricane Nate reaches the Gulf Coast. Hurricane Nate is expected to bring heavy rains for much of central U.S. as it makes landfall tonight. CBS 21 meteorologist Steve Knight tweeted Nate will make landfall as a Category 2 storm, max sustained winds of 105 mph. Locally, we can expect 13 of rain on Monday. 2:39 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Hurricane Nate now visible on New Orleans radar. The eye of Hurricane Nate is now becoming visible on the New Orleans Liddell radar. And the outer rain bands of Hurricane Nate are moving onshore in southeastern Louisiana, according to the NHC. 1:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Residents urged to complete Hurricane Nate preparations amid dangerous storm surge fears. Dr. Michael Brennan, of the NHC, warned preparations to get ready really need to be completed in the next couple of hours. He said water and tidal levels were already running above 1 to 2 feet above normal conditions. And he encouraged residents in affected areas to take heed and follow advice from local officials. In a video from the National Hurricane Center, the weather expert said Hurricane Nate was currently 150 kilometers south of the Mississippi River and moving at 26 miles per hour. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for Grand Isle, Louisiana to the Alabama and Florida border, along with metropolitan New Orleans and Lake Pontchartrain. Conditions are already beginning to deteriorate, according to Dr. Brennan, with the first rain band moving inshore. He added the NHC are expecting tropical storm conditions to extend inland, with warnings in place across southeastern Mississippi and Alabama and storm watches in eastern Alabama and northwest Georgia. Storm surge warnings, which means there is a danger of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the coastline, also have been put in place in the east of the Okaloosa-Walton County line to Indian Pass, Florida. NHC guidance says this is a life-threatening situation. Persons located within these areas should take all necessary actions to protect life and property from rising water and the potential for other dangerous conditions. Promptly follow evacuation and other instructions from local officials. Twitter Hurricane Nate's path is expected to strike between Slidell, Louisiana, and Alabama's Mobile Bay. Twitter Hurricane Nate path speed increasing as Tropical Storm Nate heads to Gulf Coast. 1:29 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Storm surge warnings in place. NOAA this afternoon warned of the potentially deadly storm surge that could claim lives in the wake of Hurricane Nate. In a tweet, the NOAA said storm surge is often the greatest threat to life and property from a hurricane. 12:40 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. Time to recap on Hurricane Nate's path, track and latest updates on the tropical storm. Hurricane Nate is now reported to be about 265 miles 425 kilometers south of Biloxi, Mississippi, and is recording maximum sustained winds 90 miles per hour 150 kilometers per hour. The center is expected to move across the northern Gulf of Mexico today, making landfall along the central United States at 8 p.m. local time tonight. Additional strengthening is expected before landfall, and Hurricane Nate is forecast to be a Category 2 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale when the center reaches the Gulf Coast. New Orleans has begun a mass exodus of the city in the wake of Nate's destructive path. All preparations along the Gulf Coast should be rushed to completion today ahead of Hurricane Nate.